Excuse my informal wear.
I put a button down, but I show you something. Jogging pants underneath.
Well, that's what a lot of newscasters do, you know. They wear jeans underneath.
You want me to put on a regular shirt or you're
No, I'm fine.
The city of New York, Boricua from the Bronx.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Angel Rodriguez, and you are tuned into NYC Talking Podcast. Today I have a man joining me who wears many hats: lawyer, finance person, former councilman, mayoral candidate for mayor, Congress candidate. You've done a lot of stuff. Sal Albanese.
No, thanks, Angel. It's great to be here. Yeah, I've definitely done a lot. I have. Some people say a little too much. You heard that I'm running for the city council, and I
just saw that on Twitter. I saw that it's like a boxer coming back. Going in.
Punch-drunk boxer, I guess. It's. I just feel that the city is really going in the wrong direction. I don't want to sit on the sidelines if I can contribute, and I think that my experience and my background will definitely be a positive factor, on the city council. But running for office and winning really is really something that I consider sort of a calling, like a member of the clergy. It's not really. I don't consider it as a job. I think it's basically the ability to serve people and make a difference. I know it sounds corny, but that's the way I've always felt. And I've spent 15 years in office as a council member in Brooklyn, but I also was a school teacher for 11 years. I taught in the New York City Public Schools.
Right.
I got my law degree and my finance credentials in my actually early 40s. And I'm also an immigrant. I was born in Italy. I'm actually the New York City story. We didn't have a lot of money. My mother was a garment worker. And if it wasn't for the public schools and the CUNY system, I would have never, me and my sisters would have never been able to elevate into the middle class. So it's kind of a New York City story. And one of the things I always talk about is giving people the opportunity to, the vehicle to improve their lives. And education is always the key, right? And I was lucky.
Absolutely.
Because, you know this as well as anyone. The CUNY system was for free in those days, right? It's still relatively cheap, but it was, when I went, the tuition, there was no tuition. So it was great because we didn't have any money. But I spent 15 years on the city council, did run for mayor a couple of times and lost.
I actually voted for you. You know that? I voted for you. I changed. I was registered as no party, right? Because I didn't support the Democrats and I didn't support the Republicans. I thought not particularly in our best interest. So I was, that option where it says no party.
Right.
But I wanted to vote in the primary. So I had to register. So I registered as a Democrat so I can vote. And and I wasn't particularly involved too much. I think most of us tend to focus on the huge elections,
right,
more than anything, and we just by default, right? So my thought going into this was, De Blasio's going to win. The one the machine is behind. This was my thought process.
You weren't far off,
right? He was the incumbent, and I, first of all, I didn't know where he came from. I didn't know anything about the guy. He just kind of just became mayor. It was like chosen by whoever chooses.
Yeah, well, as you know, Angel, the turnout was abysmally low. When he got elected in 2013 and reelected in 2017, we're talking about 13% of the people who vote in the primary. So most people didn't vote. The large majority of people didn't vote for him. Most people really weren't paying attention. So
that's a problem.
He had 10 million. He spent $10 million. I had 200,000. So you can't get your message out. You can't go on television.
Well, you came out third. You came in third place despite that difference.
I actually came in second in the primary. I came in second.
Right. The general, it's still
Oh, the
you know,
general, yeah. The general
you
came
know,
in third. I was on the reform line. That's right.
correct. You weren't, it's not like you were, there's a huge difference in money, but you were
Yeah.
still, you
Yeah.
were still in there.
I mean, if they elected people based on money per vote, I would have won. But that's not the way it works, unfortunately. But I thank you for voting for me. Where did you saw my name? You just decided to vote for me? Did you see a
Well,
debate or something?
so, so I did watch debates, and I wanted to stick it to the system, you know,
Well, I'm
that,
your guy.
that was my mindset. My mindset was, oh, this is the guy the machine is shoving my face. Well, I don't want to vote Republican. First of all, in New York City, that'll never happen.
Right.
I don't think in these days, which actually I want to talk to you about, because you are actually running in Staten Island as
Yes.
a Democrat. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Well, so we'll come back to that. So I wanted to stick it to the system. And at that time, I just looked through and I was trying to figure out, and I was like, I'm not going Republican. I don't want to go with the machine. Boom. And I went with you. I just kind of thought to myself, if the system doesn't like this guy, this is the guy I like.
Well, even my all of my detractors out there will have to admit that I'm independent. That's the way I've always. My political career was based on independence, and and even people who disagree with me will acknowledge that. But with independence comes the fact that you're not considered reliable by the money people, which I don't want to be reliable. And
the machine.
yeah. I mean, I want to. One of the reasons why I want to go to the city council is to reform our politics. I'd like to see nonpartisan elections. I'd like to see democracy vouchers where people in some cities now, every voter receives four $25 vouchers, whether you're a millionaire or whether you're making $30,000 a year, and you can donate those vouchers to anyone running for municipal office. You can only use that for that reason. And it really levels the playing field, because instead of having to go beg people
Right.
huge amounts of money, you can go to your neighbors. Hey, hi, I'm Angel. I'm running for this office and I would love your support. Can you contribute your voucher? And it really makes things a lot more democratic. Take, for example, the public housing, right, which has been neglected in the city. People live in public housing have been screwed over. And one of the reasons why they're screwed over is the fact that they really don't have any money to contribute to campaigns. Most ordinary people don't have those kinds of resources. But if every one of those residents received the voucher,
Now they
would
have
be a
value.
lot more important. And I guarantee you that those public housing facilities would not look like they do today. They would not be neglected because politicians would have to pay attention to them, and that's one of the things I want to see happen as a council member. I was on the charter revision.
Is that your idea, or is that something that's been talked about by other people as well, or is it completely something that you're kind of because it's a great idea. I think the vouchers.
Yeah. Well, no, it's in place in Seattle right now.
I've never heard of that before. Yeah.
Yeah, it's democracy vouchers. I was appointed to the Charter Revision Commission. I served a year on it. We went over the charter and made some recommendations, and I was championing democracy vouchers on the charter. We would change the law in the city to pass it, and of course, the powers that be made sure it never passed. Right. But I did. I was 2 votes short. So
wow. Close.
Yeah, I was 2 votes short. But I want to be able. We shouldn't have a system that's just based on how much money you can raise. I can tell you this: running for local. One of the reasons why running for local offices is a lot easier is because you don't have to go out and raise tons of money. You're able to get matching resources through the city now. They got a matching program, which is good for local races, not good for citywide because you got to raise millions of private money. But it takes the money out of the equation. Running for office should not be about money. It should be, everybody should have, as long as you have some support, you're able to get on a ballot, you should be able to wage your campaign. And that's one of the reasons why New York City and the country is in deep doo-doo, because because it's all about raising big money, and it becomes a pay-for-play situation, you know. And
Well, it feels like it's all private interests, you know. Um, and this is all speculation, right? I'm not involved. Like I don't have any insider information. You haven't been in council, may have a clearer view, and understanding that it seems as though it's, well, in one of the debates, I actually watched one of your debates recently, and you guys were talking about one of the questions that they were asking was, should the mayor have to report favors
right.
that are done for their donors and things like that? That would be a huge conflict of interest. And and again, you will probably know better than me. I'll take, for instance, the closing of Rikers. I have a feeling that more than helping reform, that's about real estate. I don't know that for sure. All right, I don't have any. I just have a feeling that I don't really believe that that's about reform, because let's say you and I are in a room together, okay? And in that room, I treat you like crap. I'm always slapping you up. I take your lunch. Right. I rough you up. And tomorrow we get moved to a nicer room. Right. What changed? What changed? You know, right. Of course they can make the arguments that they put us in different rooms, but then I'm going to have the next guy in the room with me who I'll take his lunch. So I don't feel like, you know, I'm opposed to those borough jails. I actually have one that would be coming up like a couple blocks from where I live, but I don't believe that they have. If they were saying that this will definitely improve things and bring crime down in New York City and help people be treated better and reform and what's the term, rehabilitated in jail and stuff, then I'll be like, you know what, I'm for it. But I really don't believe that. I want to think that there's good intentions behind it. I just don't believe it. You know,
you are right to be skeptical, Angel. You're right to be skeptical. Anytime you see New York City, you always got to be careful, because you know, whenever there's land available, it could be it becomes
think about it.
Land, right?
That's an island. You know what you could do there? You know, they could probably put some really nice high rises. Some, you know, they could do some crazy stuff there. And I have no. It's just my guts that tell, my street smarts tell me that. You know,
well, you've got a good instinct. You grew up in the Bronx.
Yes, sir. Yes, I grew up near 170th Street, 167th, that area.
Right.
Right by the concourse in the late 80s and 90s, which kind of brings us to New York today. New York today is starting to kind of feel like it did back then. Not exactly quite like it, but it's starting to feel like that. Well, what years were you in council? I had looked it up.
I was on the council from 1982 to 1997.
So you had overlap with Giuliani, right? So
I did. I did.
And I know you didn't agree with him a lot of things, but would you agree? And this is one of the things that sometimes people don't like when I say it, but I have to be honest, right? Just an honest statement. As a New Yorker who grew up in what we'll call the ghetto, right, in the South Bronx, I saw friends of mine get shot. Yeah. I used to see the gangs outside with their colors on and the beads on, and it was a rough way to grow up. Giuliani, now that I'm older, I can look back and say, oh, he did a lot of things that probably were not very cool, you know? But I have to admit, if I'm honest with myself, that aspect changed. Yeah. I don't know exactly. I don't know enough, but you were in council at that time, so maybe he can have some insight. There was a change. He did. I guess I don't want to use language that is inappropriate, but he cleaned up the streets. Despite
he benefited from a couple of factors. One of the things that he benefited from was, and Mayor Dinkins never got credit for, is they hired. They hired 10,000 officers the last year of the Dinkins administration, and so when Giuliani came into office, he inherited a large police force. But in all fairness, he did every mayor does some good things. But what my problem with Giuliani was, he went out of his way to divide people in the city. He was harsh. There was no reason to cause division, and he did that. Bloomberg, to his credit, kind of advanced the crime drop as well, but we didn't have that much tension between ethnic and racial between people in the city based on race and what have you. So that was one of my problems with Giuliani, and
I was too young. I don't. I had no involvement in politics or anything whatsoever. I was too young at the time. I didn't pay mind to anything, but that was the one thing that I visibly noticed.
Right.
That all of a sudden the streets were safer.
Yes.
And they stayed. I feel like they stayed consistently that way under Bloomberg.
Right.
And then when we got De Blasio, I feel like it's starting to go back. And I don't know much about him. I mean, like, I felt like he came out of nowhere, but you can only speak of.
Angel, I knew a lot about him. That's why I ran against him. I knew he would be a terrible mayor. I mean, I know De Blasio from the days when I was on the city council. He was an aide to Bill Lynch, who was a deputy mayor under Mayor Dinkins. So I knew that De Blasio didn't have what it takes to be a mayor of New York City. And unfortunately, I was right.
Yeah,
the city's backsliding. I mean, there are things that are beyond his control, like the coronavirus, which he mishandled, by the way, as well. But the street situation is bad. We have a lot of folks that are mentally ill and need help. They're on the street getting no help. Right. We have lots of people that are committing crimes now that are being released. I mean, it's just it's a mess out there, and there's a very gloomy feeling about the city right now. We have to turn that around. I'm a big believer in New York. I think it's resilient and it's going to come back. But there are a lot of folks who will not wait for it to come back, right?
Well, there's been a mass exodus. That's for sure.
Thousands of
people for sure
have bailed out. So, but I'm glad you're doing well there. It seems like you're happy with your job. And what neighborhood do you live in again?
I'm in Kew Gardens.
Okay, so you're in Queens now.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, how is Kew Gardens?
Well, let me tell you, we have the neighborhood's a nice neighborhood, right? But we have a new hotel that came next door to us, and the hotel was used to house a lot of homeless individuals. And in fairness, there weren't too many problems at that time. Ever since Corona hit, the hotel has lowered their rates. So now kids have been using the hotel to party and throw what they call coronavirus parties. And since that started to happen, we've had 2 shootings.
Wow.
One was a 15-year-old shot a guy in the leg because they had some disagreement about the party. And the other one was an actual drive out of the entire front of the hotel. So every day now, when I walk past there to go to the gym or to go to the office, there's police cars there, and we had to fight for that. We've had a couple of meetings and stuff. So Kew Gardens in itself is a nice neighborhood, but that hotel has become a big problem for us. And I was cool until the shooting started. I'm okay with helping people in need. We've been there. I've been there. When I came to New York, we were in the shelters. We've been there, so I understand. But when you start doing drive-bys, that's kind of like,
that's not good. No.
That's kind of becomes a concern.
We've had a huge spike in shootings and murders this year. So it's and the homeless situation in the city is out of control. Those folks need help. They're not getting supportive services, and they're really causing themselves and others issues in the neighborhoods that they're in. Unfortunately, I just talked to somebody from Queens as well, they have a homeless shelter, and he says that people are moving out of the area because the homeless shelter, the residents are causing problems, because they need help. They're out in the street.
Well, there's mental illness is a big problem. Yes. How do you get someone who's mentally ill to commit to treatment, to commit to help, to stay somewhere if they don't want it? I could never answer that. I could never understand that. Like, if I am in the street and I am a mentally capable individual, I can get it together and I can. But if I'm a mentally ill person, right? How do you help that person that doesn't have? There's a guy in my area who's homeless, and he swung on me. He actually threw a punch at me.
Yeah.
So he just kind of stood in front of me and he threw the punch. Now I used to fight mixed martial arts, and I kind of bobbed out the way, and I came up and I was about to, I was gonna put this guy to sleep, but hey, he swung on me. I was being attacked, right?
Yeah,
So I
sure.
got out the way, and I was about to clock this guy, and I looked, and then I saw his eyes,
Yeah.
and I saw no malice in his eyes.
Right.
I didn't see any intent. You can tell when someone's trying to hurt you. I saw no intent, so I kind of just paused and waited, and then he just kind of went like this, and then he just hobbled away. So that guy, I don't think he's a bad individual. He's not trying to hurt anyone, but had he done that to the wrong person, they would have probably hurt him. If he did that to my wife, she would have probably gotten hit. So he's a danger to himself because he can get hurt for doing that in a real bad way. In fact, I've seen him lumped up many times before, so it's possible that it has happened. And he could hurt others.
We're not doing much for the mentally ill. It's sad. We have, they estimate that 40% of the inmates in Rikers have mental illness. I mean, and with medication and some therapy, these folks can be productive, but there's no follow-up. They leave Rikers, right? They go back on the street. Nobody follows up with them. They get off their medication, and the cycle repeats itself. They do something crazy. They punch somebody out. They assault somebody. They go back to prison. Nobody's really helping. And we just don't have a handle on this stuff. Maybe
it's a hard thing, isn't it? Like, would you, what do you have any ideas for that?
I mean, there are folks. There's a Kendra's law, which if employed could be very effective, but it's controversial because if somebody can't help themselves, right, and they're mentally ill, and the family wants the person committed or to get help, they could be taken off the street, right? But people
against their will,
but people believe that that there's bias involved, and maybe people of color would be more impacted by it. But I think you try to guard against that, but I think it's a humane way to handle things by having folks get some help, and then you don't, of course, not go to prison, but get some help, get on medication. There's follow-up by social workers, because they wind up hurting themselves and others. So I mean, it's a controversial.
I can see thinking about it within now just these few seconds. I could see the difficulties that would be encountered with that.
What's the alternative, Angel? I mean, you've got to. I think you put in guardrails to make sure that it's not abused, right? And then try to implement it on a pilot basis, and then work from there. I mean, it's on the books. The law is on the books, and you can do it. It's called Kendra's law, and the guy that actually promoted it, this guy, Dr. Jaffe, who I met with when I was running for mayor. I actually just started leukemia last week, but I'm a big believer in it, because I think that people need help, right? And the people that need help sometimes can't help themselves because they don't want to help themselves because they're ill. My dad had mental illness, so I'm very familiar with it. My father had it. He was, and I saw that for years he didn't get any help. He finally, we found an Italian psychiatrist, right? Because my father didn't speak English, and he convinced my father to go on medication, right? And he was, not that he was he was out of work for years because of the mental illness, but he began to calm down. He began to be more sedate, and was able to, live his life significantly better on the medication. He took the medication every day. So I know it works, and it's just a matter of having the political will to get things like that done. look, sometimes you got to take risks, to make things better. You can't just continue to sit back and allow folks on the street that are hurting themselves and others when they can get help. There are medications that help folks like this. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
What do we do,
that's
Andrew? We don't do anything.
yeah,
Right?
that's the thing. There's really two things here, that either you just let things continue as they are, or you do something like that. That's tough.
It's tough, but
It's a hard. I kind of feel like taking that stance. I don't know.
yeah.
Inside of me, as I'm thinking about it, it just gives me a really bad feeling. Like it just gives me a really bad feeling inside.
I get it. No, it's a balancing act. But so say that you for example, in my case, my dad, right? He was sick for years. He was ranting and raving. Really, being disruptive.
But you guys were with him, right? Like
we were with him.
So he was lucky in that sense, because if he didn't have his family and he ends up in the street, there's no one to help.
Right, but it was a very disruptive situation, and if somebody said to me, we were immigrants, so we really didn't know much about how to get things done, but I would have signed, my mother would have signed a consent to have him get help, get him.
So the law.
And we're not talking about police dragging you off the street, but social workers bringing you in. And saying, look,
is it with family, or is this like say your father didn't have you guys and he was alone in the street? Does that law still allow him to get snatched up and brought in for treatment, or does it require a person in the family to willingly say, okay, I want to help him because he can't help himself? Let's say I'm in the street, I'm ranting and raving, and maybe if I took some medication, I'd be calm. Can they just grab me and take me away? Is that?
No, not. You would need a court order to get that done. You could, in other words, if you didn't have family that requested that you get help, you would have to get a court order. A judge would have to decree that you're in need of help. You're going to hurt yourself or others, and they would bring you in and put you on. Try to get you on medication, try to get you help. You can't just, grab people off the street, obviously. I'm not for that, and no one's for that. You got to balance interests here. I mean, it's
that's a hard Kendra's law. I'm gonna look up on. I want to read more on that, because that's a very that one. I'm having a real time with that.
They named it after a woman, a kid, Kendra, who was killed by someone who was mentally disturbed. And
I see.
People.
There's something like that in Florida too. Yeah, there's a law. I forget the name right now. I know there's something in Florida that was very controversial along those lines. I just can't. I can't remember.
Well, look up after we get off. Google Kendra's law, and you'll see what I mean. I think it can be done with some civility. It could be implemented with some civility, and in the long run, it would be productive. The problem with all this stuff, as you pointed out, is sometimes there are abuses, and that abuse is unacceptable. But I don't know what's worse. What is worse? Having people in the street just damaging themselves and others. It's as you said, it's a very difficult concept. Look it up and let me know what you think. After send me a DM.
For sure.
But it's well known. It was signed by the governor and the legislature passed it. And this guy Jaffe, when I met with him when I was running for mayor, was a strong advocate for it, and he believed that it would be helpful to people that suffer from mental illness. So, we got onto a very interesting topic.
I know. So I just respect your time. I just want to ask you real quick. You're going to be running for office again.
Yeah.
You're running as a Democrat in what I think is more of a Republican area. How does that work? How are you going to do that?
You're right. It's more of a Republican area, but I represented, as a Democrat, one of the most conservative districts in the city, Bay Ridge, for 15 years. I was the only Democrat elected there. I think I've got the appeal. I've got the ability to appeal across party lines. I'm a Democrat, but I'm really, well, you wouldn't call me a party diehard. I'm more of an independent than anything else. And I think that's a big factor in my favor. But you're right. It's a Republican district. It will be a very competitive race. There's no doubt about it. And I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, I wish you good luck. Good luck on the race. And I look forward, I'd love for you to get in there and, get some of these ideas implemented.
I'd love for you to run for office one day. You sound like an idealistic young man. We need good people in government, really. What we have now is a lot of professional politicians. They haven't done anything else but run for office. I mean, one of the things that's all they do is run for office. One of the things I enjoyed about being a school teacher for 11 years is the ability to go to the city council and actually understand what goes on in the school building, right? It wasn't all theory. I mean, I taught, I coached. So that's important. We need people from
who
have real jobs.
Walks of life. Yeah, real walks of life. We have a lot of that happening. I know I've spoken to about 3 people who are running for council. None of them were prior council members like yourself who's got experience. These are just young people that are new to the whole thing, right, and they want to make a change. So I've been seeing it. I don't know that I could. I had a period where I was doing a lot of like right-wing writing. I've had these periods where I started as a Democrat. I wanted to be able to keep my guns, so I started supporting the right so that I could keep my guns legally. And then while I was over there, all these other policies and all these things, and I'm going to these events and I'm hearing these things. And I'm like, whoa, what do you mean deport them all? What are you talking about? And I started to realize that my views were basically on all social issues. I was at odds with that party, right. And I removed myself. And that's when I went to that period of independent, but I couldn't vote. I couldn't vote in New York in the primaries. So I switched myself back. But my fear is that if I were to run for anything, all you have to do is read anything that I wrote during that period.
That's true, Angel.
Take a snippet from it. You can make me a gun nut. You can make me any number of things based on some of that.
That's one of the problems with social media. You're absolutely right. But
there's nothing I can do to get rid of it. It's out there,
people also, I think.
I just own it. I own it.
I think they understand that people evolve too. You evolve.
That's it.
I mean, that's it. And that's human nature. And if people don't understand that, then they're not really worth trying to convince.
You are listening to the NYC Talking Podcast, the realest lifestyle blog ever. www.nyctalking.com. Please follow Angel R. Talk on Twitter and Instagram. Please like NYC Talking on Facebook. We are NYC Talking. Thanks for listening.